Coming to you today from the studio Montrose, a bigger studio than what I've got in Uray. It's not big by any means, but it's bigger than what I've got there. And the fall color season is rapidly approaching. This being the 3rd of September, I think it is. And I need to get a couple more fall color paintings done. Unfortunately, we can't go out on location and do it because they haven't turned yet. But I want to take some photos. I'm going to use some photos that I've taken in the past, and I'll paint from that. Um, this is going to be kind of an explanation or a demo or a lesson on how to use a photo to paint from. For me, I don't like to use a photo and try to copy it literally. I'm more interested in using it as inspiration and develop a painting from that. Here's my standard palette. It's the same color layout that I use on my plein air palettes, whether I'm painting watercolor or oil. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Essentially, it's a warm and a cool of each of the primaries with a couple earth colors thrown in. Here's some French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue. This is a titanium white, yellow ochre. This will be, I've got to squirt it out yet, this will be a cad yellow light, I think is what this one is. And an Indian yellow, which I just love dearly. Alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, a sap green, and a viridian green. Now the only color in the primary range, the warm and the cool, I don't use much of at all is the cad red. I get all of the reds I need out of the alizarin crimson. And it's a permanent alizarin crimson. And this over here is, in this cup is some liquid drying agent. And that will just assist in speeding up the drying. So let's get started. This mixture has got a little bit of liquid in it. That'll help it dry a little faster and let it set up. Liquid is a drying agent. It's a painting medium. Some artists like to use it, and others don't. A lot of it's personal preference. There's it's made by Liquid, and walnut alkyd, walnut oil alkyd is another drying agent, and I've used it. I've got some of that up in Uray. Just bought a little bottle of it to try. We got the air conditioner on in here, but it'll only come on periodically. So if you hear it in the background, that's what it is. And I'll try to just mute the sound. And then when it goes off, I'll turn the sound on again and comment on what I'm doing. All right, so I think that'll help. Be good enough. What I've got, here's the photo. I'll pull a photo up of what I'm painting. And I've done this version, or I've painted from this photo a couple times, and have varied it from time to time, but there's certain elements in it that I like. I'm going to use some burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue as a drawing. So I've got a little bit of a hillside in the back here, some green on it. Lots of aspen. And the foreground here has some shadows from the trees. A little bit of blue sky up in the corner here, and we'll put a couple more patches that aren't in the photo. Well, that one is, but the rest of them really don't have much blue. And I'm just putting in an indication of where some of these trees, the heavy bulk of the trees, I guess, will probably be over in here. There's lots of them. If you've ever walked into an aspen grove with the fall colors, your skin just kind of glows from the light. I'm just going to let that set up while this air conditioner is running and get a little tacky. Then we'll come back to it. So I've got some green in here. This is primarily all kind of a yellow with blotches of shadow. And I'm going to extend that green back in here, so there's a hillside that comes down. You don't see a horizon line back here because it's all covered with this foliage. And it's just really heavy with... So I've got some green in here. This is primarily all kind of a yellow with blotches of shadow. And I'm going to extend that green back in here, so there's a hillside that comes down. You don't see a horizon line back here because it's all covered with this foliage. And it's just really heavy with... and try to keep it somewhat loose and impressionistic, somewhat like what I'd paint if I was out on location. That's what I like about a lot of those plein air pieces, are that they're really spontaneous. They have a spontaneous feel, and that's primarily because you got to paint relatively quickly. Now I'm going to introduce a little sap green here. At some point I'm going to put the photo down and we'll turn it off, and I just won't be referring to it anymore. But I'm just using it right now as a basic reference to kind of get get the idea. Now by painting this base color block in somewhat thinly, I can use some of that in the final. This is a French ultramarine blue and some red sienna. So I'm going to put a little more in there, and that's going to be this dark. There's some hints of evergreens back here, and I'm going to put one in. So I let some of this set up with that liquid, it'll dry, or get tacky anyway. I'm going to go ahead and put the blue in that sky, kind of a bluebird sky kind of day. Now this paint's going on a little thicker. So I basically used it just for the idea of these shadows coming across here. This is a pretty dark mass. There's shadow right in here. Because we're not trying to paint the photo. We're not trying to copy what's in the photo. I'm just trying to use it as an idea that I can build upon and make a painting. So it could be I know there's some dark in there. It might be another spruce tree. The hard part's going to be all these trees. Aspen trunks. That's what everybody loves. Like I said, I've put the photo away. I'm not even looking at it. Turn the computer off because I don't want to be ruled by what that photo looks like. I don't want to create a painting. Once I get all of this background stuff laid in, then I can start marking some trees in, some of the aspens. Of course, there was an awful lot of information in that photograph. And what I need to do is edit that information, simplify. So sometimes what that means is it's just a stroke or two of color here and there to signify a suggestion. Alright, I think it's time to start laying in some aspen trunks. As I said, I want the bulk of them over here. As that dries a little more, I can drag this brush over it and create a little more of an impression of texture. I say dry, I guess that's what it's doing, but I mean, it just gets to a point where it's kind of tacky. Well, I'll kind of let that, leave that alone and get onto these trees. What I need to do is get some, so the whole idea here is to try to make one side of them lighter. If you ever look, it gets some roundness. So typically that's the way to do that, is what they call modeling. And so you can take a brush. Most of these trees have some pretty healthy scores. As this develops, I may wind up adding more. So you see this stuff in the background here, it's going to be real hard to do much of anything with it at this point, because as I monkey with this, then I mess up the trees that are in front. So this has all got to be pretty much the way it's going to be. This will all get filled back in with more of this detail. I'm just trying to get some suggestion of it right now, so I can see how this is developing. Well, so far I don't see any big changes I got to make. At this point, it's just more of the same. So we can tell by these shadows, they're all going this way. The sun was over that way to the left. So this is going to be a darker side of the tree. If you have the opportunity to get out and look at the aspen, whatever the season, but this being color season coming up, take a look at the trunks. There's a lot of color variation. You're going to be amazed. Just trying to give the illusion of detail. Not really interested in making it. So I've got to figure out what to do about this guy. That's bothering me. So the question is whether to make it more pronounced or try to cover it up or make less of it. Well, I guess I've answered that. Once this is all dried, if I decide that's not going to work, I can just paint over it. I'm not sure this green path adds anything. So this right here needs to connect as a shadow to something out here. Okay, I'm going to let that set up for a while. I think come back to it tomorrow. Let's see what we can do. So I'm back to this painting. I left it yesterday. This is the next day, and I'm not real happy with what's going on here. So I spent a little time and looked at it, and I decided, you know, a photo, just because a photo looks good doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make a good painting, and doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make a good painting. The other thing that's important to note is that sometimes the information is better edited. In other words, don't paint it all. Some of the changes, I think the yellows down here and up here are just too much the same, maybe. This yellow is distracting from that yellow. So I think what I'm going to try to do here is knock this down, subdue it, put it in the shadow, probably, and then let that'll pop better, I think. It'll be interesting to see. I used liquid on this. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, see that that didn't set up yet. So that's still wet paint. So I'm going to here we're going to try something, and we'll just see how to fix this. I'm essentially just scraping the paint off. And sometimes I've done this before and actually wound up with a better result than what I had. I did a painting at a plein air competition in Marble Falls, Texas. And it was a nocturne. You see this? See what's happening here? It was a nocturne, and I wasn't real satisfied with it, so I scraped it off, and when I got it scraped off, I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So just out of curiosity, I went ahead and a whim, I just went ahead and entered it as it was. And I wound up taking first place Artist's Choice Award. See, there's some interesting effects taking place here. Not that that's anything desirable, but it, well, could be. Let's just see what happens here. While I wanted to knock that down, the intensity of it, the chroma. I think I succeeded. Whether that's the desirable look that I want or not, I don't know. No, probably not really. So what can we do with this? Trying to keep from muddying it up. So purple or violet is the complement to yellow, orange. The more orange it is, the bluer the complement. The yellower it is, the more purple the complement. But well, that's kind of interesting. One of the things that is important to do when you're out on location painting, plein air painting, is to squint, and that will simplify. I actually kind of like this. That will simplify the shapes. That's real interesting. You might be able to do something with that. It'll help to find some trees. Next thing I got to address is I've got these two spruce trees in here. It's better not to have two of anything. If you can have two, you better have three. Odd numbers. So I might put another one in here. As much as I'd like to get so comfortable with what I'm doing that I don't have to constantly question things, I just can't seem to achieve that. So that kind of helps a little, maybe. Getting thicker, juicier paint on there, and that doesn't hurt anything. I think this is working all right. There's little random bits of color I add in there to kind of make it interesting, give somebody something to discover. You know, something I don't do very often, but I should try to keep in mind is to soften. And the best way that I know is to get a soft brush, something really soft, and then you can just get in here and you can overdo it, in my opinion. So yeah, that little spot right in there, that's kind of neat. Got to wipe the paint off. The whole idea is to keep it kind of dry and fluffy. So let me get in here and start working on these trees again. My wife commented that she thought they were too yellow. But part of what I wanted to convey is the idea that the glow, the aspen glow, the glow from the gold permeates everything. And the important part of this painting, I guess, in my opinion, since I'm the artist, is the detail in the aspen trunks. You know, part of the idea is you have a focal point, I suppose. What points of interest? Those you want to make a little more detailed, sharper edges, and everything else can be softened. It doesn't need to be as direct and improved as your focal point. This is just a gray. This, my friends, is a mahl stick, used primarily to steady the hand. So as I do some of this, if I don't want to be too particular here. It gives some texture to that trunk. I've got the camera positioned right in front of me. So I have to kind of reach around it. The other thing I think is needed is a few more aspen trees in the distance here. Something between where these are in the relative foreground to what's way back there. Something in between. Yeah, I think that's helping to fill in the blanks a little bit. I guess I'm at the point where I don't know what else I'd do. Pretty much what I had in mind. The difficult part is it just kind of takes on a life of its own as you go along. Guess I could add some details, some twigs and forest floor debris, which is probably a good idea. It's trying to create the illusion of detail. It's some cobalt blue. I just like to stick some of these little random bits of color throughout the painting. Give the viewer a little treat if they're really looking. I've already gone through and put a little alizarin crimson in there. So there you go. I think I'm done. And there's some things I wanted to talk about a little bit. I got some neat things going on here. I think, in my opinion, I think this foreground turned out very good. I'm very happy with the result. And what makes it good, and I think what makes it work, or what helped, I should say, is that I knocked down the brightness, the yellow, and there's still some golden hue there, but it doesn't compete with what I've got going back in here. I've got some heavy paint and some very light transparent places. And let's see if we can take a look at these. This is very, very transparent in here. And up in here, those kind of brownish places. There's little bits and dabs of thick paint. There's some soft edges. There's some great detail in the tree trunks, which I was striving for. So overall, I'm pretty satisfied. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as I always say, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend a little of it with me. Time is the one thing that we have that once it's gone, we can't ever get it back. So that's our treasure.